A crashed alien ship sat in the desert until a human voice awakened it. Part 1. The Gobi Desert stretched endlessly under the burning sun. Sand and rock covered everything as far as the eye could see. Nothing lived here except small lizards and tough plants that had learned to survive without water. It was a dead place, or so everyone thought. Ho wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at his equipment again. The readings made no sense. He was a geologist, a scientist who studied rocks and minerals. He had come to this remote part of the desert to search for iron deposits. His company wanted to know if mining here would be profitable. Simple work. Boring work. At least it should have been. He called to his colleague, "Come look at this." Park walked over from the truck where she had been checking their communication equipment. She was younger than Ho, smart and curious. She looked at the screen he was pointing at and frowned. "That cannot be right," she said. "The readings show something massive underground, but the shape is wrong for a natural formation." "I know," Ho said quietly. "It looks almost like a structure, something built." They spent the next 3 hours taking more readings. Each one confirmed what they had found. Something huge lay beneath the sand, about 30 meters down. It was made of metal, but not any metal their equipment could identify. The shape was long and curved, like a giant seed buried in the earth. Ho reported their findings to the company. Within 2 days, government officials arrived. Within a week, the entire area was surrounded by soldiers and scientists from around the world. Ho and were pushed to the outer edge of a growing research camp, told to wait while the experts took over. They dug carefully, using machines, and then by hand when they got close. What they found changed everything humanity knew about the universe. It was a ship, not a human ship. Nothing humans had ever built looked like this. The hull was smooth and dark like polished stone, but it was clearly metal of some kind. Strange symbols covered parts of the surface, writing in a language no one had ever seen. The ship was perhaps 200 meters long, shaped like a curved blade. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. And it was completely dead. Scientists tried everything to make contact. They sent radio signals, electromagnetic pulses, and mathematical sequences. They tried to cut through the hull to get inside, but their tools could not even scratch the surface. They bombarded it with sound waves and light patterns. Nothing worked. The ship sat silent and dark, keeping all its secrets. 3 weeks passed. Ho watched from the outer camp as the greatest minds in the world failed again and again. He could not sleep at night. The ship called to him in his dreams, though it made no sound. He felt connected to it somehow, though he could not explain why. One night he made a decision. He waited until the guards changed shifts, then slipped through the perimeter. He had learned the patrol patterns by watching carefully. He moved through the darkness until he stood before the ship, alone under the stars. Up close it was even more impressive. The hull seemed to absorb the moonlight. Ho reached out and touched it. The metal was cool and smooth under his fingers. "Hello," he said softly. He felt foolish talking to a dead machine, but he continued anyway. "I am Ho. I was the one who found you." Nothing happened. He sat down in the sand, his back against the hull. "My grandmother used to tell me stories," he said. "She said that the stars were the eyes of our ancestors watching over us. I never believed her when I was young. I wanted facts and evidence. But now, looking at you, I wonder if she was right, if there is more to the universe than what we can measure." He talked for hours. He told the ship about his childhood about the ocean he loved. He talked about his parents who wanted him to be a doctor, and how he disappointed them by becoming a geologist. He spoke about his loneliness, how he had never married because he could never find someone who understood his need to search for answers in rocks and dirt. "Everyone thinks I am strange," he admitted. "Maybe I am, but I found you, did I not? Maybe being strange is not so bad." He laughed quietly at himself. Here he was, a grown man, talking to a spaceship like it was an old friend. The scientists would think he had lost his mind. Then he noticed something. The hull was warming under his back, not much, just a little. He stood up quickly and turned around. A soft blue light was spreading across the surface of the ship. It moved like water, flowing along the strange symbols carved into the metal. The symbols began to glow one by one, like stars waking up after a long night. Ho stepped back, his heart pounding. He wanted to run and call the others, but his legs would not move. He could only watch as the light grew brighter. A section of the hull began to change. The solid metal seemed to become liquid, swirling and parting until an opening appeared. A doorway. Beyond it was soft golden light. Then came the voice. It did not come from speakers or from the air. It came from inside his head, clear and gentle. The words were not Korean or English or any language he knew, but somehow he understood them perfectly. "You are the first to speak to us as living beings," the voice said. "For 10,000 years I have waited. Others came with demands and fear and equations, but you came with stories and loneliness and truth. You spoke to me as one soul speaks to another." Ho found his voice. "What are you?" "I am Orun. I am the last memory of a people called the... I am the ship that carried them across the stars until war brought us down to this world. I have slept for so long, waiting for someone to wake me. And now you have." The doorway seemed to pulse with light, inviting him in. "Enter last speaker," Orun said. "We have much to discuss, and I am afraid we do not have much time." Ho looked back at the camp in the distance. He could see lights and movement. Someone had noticed the glow. Soon soldiers would come running. He turned back to the doorway. Every logical part of his brain told him to wait, to call for help, to let the experts handle this. But something deeper spoke louder. He had spent his whole life searching for meaning in rocks and minerals. Now meaning had found him. He took a deep breath and stepped through the doorway. Behind him, the hull sealed shut just as the first shouts reached the ship. Inside, Ho began a journey that would change not just his life, but the fate of every human being on Earth. The ancient ship was silent no more. A crashed alien ship sat in the desert until a human voice awakened it. Part 2. The inside of the ship was nothing like Ho had expected. He had imagined cold metal walls and strange machines. Instead, he found himself in a space that felt almost alive. The walls curved gently, glowing with soft golden light that seemed to breathe. The air was warm and smelled like flowers he could not name. "Do not be afraid," Orun said. The voice still came from inside his mind, but now it felt more like a friend talking than a stranger. "I am trying not to be," Ho admitted. "This is a lot to understand." "Sit," Orun said. A section of the floor rose up and shaped itself into something like a chair. "I will explain what I can." Ho sat down carefully. The material was soft and warm, like living skin. He tried not to think about that too much. 10,000 of your years ago," Orun began, "my creators traveled the stars. They called themselves the... They were peaceful people, curious about the universe. They built ships like me to carry them to distant worlds, to learn and to share knowledge." Images appeared in the air around Ho. He saw tall beings with silver skin and large dark eyes. They moved gracefully through beautiful cities that floated among the clouds. He saw them planting gardens on barren moons and teaching young ones to read the patterns of stars. "They were wonderful," Ho whispered. "They were," Orun agreed, and there was deep sadness in the voice. But they were not alone in the universe. There were others who did not share their love of peace. The images changed. Now Ho saw darkness spreading across the stars. Ships made of black metal, shaped like insects, swarmed through space. They attacked the cities without warning, without mercy. "They called themselves the Silence Collective," Orun explained. "Long ago, something terrible happened to them. A disaster that nearly destroyed their entire species. They survived, but they were changed. They believed that all other intelligent life was a threat. Their solution was simple: Silence all other voices in the universe before those voices could hurt them. They killed out of fear, Ho said. Yes, fear is a powerful poison. It can turn even gentle beings into monsters. ORUN paused. They tried to reason with them, tried to show them that cooperation was better than destruction. But the silence would not listen. They only knew how to end conversations, not how to have them. What happened to The sadness in ORUN's voice grew heavier. They are gone, all of them. The war lasted for 200 years. World by world they fell. I was one of the last ships to escape. I carried a small group of survivors. We hoped to find a place to hide, to rebuild. But the silence followed us. More images appeared. Ho saw ORUN fleeing through space, damaged and desperate. He saw the ship falling toward a blue and green world, crashing into an endless desert. My crew did not survive the crash, ORUN said. I was alone, damaged. I had just enough power to bury myself in the sand and wait. I programmed myself to sleep until I detected true communication, not just signals or mathematics, real connection, soul speaking to soul. Why that? Ho asked. Because that is what they valued most. They believed that true intelligence was not about solving problems or building machines. It was about the ability to reach across the void and touch another mind with honesty and emotion. They called it soul resonance. Ho thought about all the scientists who had tried to contact the ship. They had used brilliant methods, advanced technology, perfect mathematical sequences. But they had treated ORUN like a puzzle to solve, not a being to meet. I just talked to you, he said slowly, like you were a person. Yes, and in 10,000 years, you were the first to do so. Outside the ship, Ho could hear muffled sounds, shouting machines, probably soldiers trying to cut their way in. ORUN seemed unconcerned. They cannot enter unless I allow it, ORUN said. Do not worry, but we must discuss something important, something that cannot wait. The images in the air changed again. Now Ho saw a map of stars. One cluster of dots pulsed with red light. When I woke, I sent out a signal. I did not mean to. It was automatic, a reaction to finding a compatible mind after so long. ORUN's voice became heavy with guilt. The silence heard me. Ho felt cold spread through his body. What does that mean? They are coming. A fleet has changed course and is heading toward your world. They will arrive in approximately one of your years. A year, Ho stood up, his heart racing. What will they do? What they always do. They will silence your world. Every human voice will be ended. Every sign of your civilization will be erased. The silence does not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They only destroy. Ho put his hands over his face. He had awakened this ship. He had brought this doom upon humanity. His simple act of kindness, of reaching out to a lonely machine, had sentenced his entire species to death. This is my fault, he said. No, ORUN said firmly. I chose to wake. I chose to send the signal. The responsibility is mine, but the past cannot be changed. We can only face what comes. Can we fight them? Can you help us? Perhaps, but first, your people must learn to work together. And they must understand that the answer to the silence is not better weapons. It is something far harder to find. The ship's hull opened again. Light poured in from outside along with surprised shouts. Soldiers stood at the entrance, weapons raised. Behind them, Ho could see the military liaison he had met at the camp. She was a stern woman, but her face now showed only shock. It is time to talk to your people, ORUN said, but I will only speak through you. You are my bridge to humanity. Do not fail me, Ho. Ho walked to the doorway. The soldiers stepped back, unsure what to do. I need to speak with your leaders, Ho said, his voice steadier than he felt. All of them, every nation, every government. What I have to tell them will change everything. Behind him, ORUN's golden light pulsed gently, like a heart beating with hope. The true work was about to begin. In the days that followed, Bin arrived at the camp. She was a linguist, an expert in languages and communication. The government had sent her to help translate whatever the alien might say. She was a quiet woman with gentle eyes, the kind of person who listened more than she spoke. She sat with Ho for hours, learning about ORUN, trying to understand how to bridge the gap between human and alien thinking. She asked questions that others did not think to ask, not about technology or weapons, but about feelings and meanings. ORUN chose you for a reason, she told Ho one evening. Your words were not special, but your heart was open. That is rare. Can we teach others to be open? Ho asked. Bin smiled sadly. That is the hardest lesson of all. Above them, the stars shone cold and distant. Somewhere out there, ships of death were flying closer with every passing moment. Humanity had 1 year to learn what they had learned too late, that survival requires not just strength, but the courage to reach out with an open heart. The clock was ticking. A crashed alien ship sat in the desert until a human voice awakened it. Part 3. 6 months had passed since ORUN woke. The world had changed in ways no one could have imagined. At first there was panic. When news of the alien ship spread, people reacted with fear. Some called it a hoax. Others said it was the end of the world. Governments tried to keep the truth secret, but secrets do not last long in the modern age. Soon everyone knew aliens existed and they were coming to destroy humanity. Riots broke out in major cities. Markets crashed. Religious leaders gave different explanations, some calling it divine punishment, others calling it a test of faith. For weeks, chaos ruled. But then something remarkable happened. Humanity began to unite. Remembered the exact moment she understood this. She was an aerospace engineer, brought to the facility to study ORUN's technology. She had expected to find primitive systems, or at least something she could understand with enough study. Instead, she found principles of physics that made her feel like a child learning to count. This is impossible, she had said to ORUN during one of their sessions. Your engines bend space itself. We are centuries away from understanding this. They had thousands of years to develop their science, ORUN replied gently through Ho. But they also made many mistakes along the way. I can guide you past those mistakes. It will not take centuries, perhaps only decades. Had laughed bitterly. We do not have decades, we have 6 more months. Then we must focus on what matters most, ORUN said. Not weapons, not engines, something else. ORUN showed them something it called the Echo Core. It sat in the deepest part of the ship, a sphere of crystal that seemed to hold swirling light inside. Looking at it made his head hurt, like staring at a math problem with no solution. This device amplifies communication across any distance, ORUN explained. They built it as a last hope, a way to reach out to any mind anywhere with perfect clarity, not just words but complete understanding, thoughts, feelings, memories, everything. Why did they not use it against the silence? Ho asked. Because activating it requires something they could not give. A living consciousness must merge with me permanently. Their mind becomes part of the ship, part of the communication itself, the valued individual identity above all else. None of them were willing to give up who they were. Felt a chill run down her spine. You mean someone has to die? Not exactly. They would still exist. Their memories, their personality, everything that makes them who they are would remain, but they would no longer have a separate body. They would become part of ORUN forever. The weight of this knowledge spread through the leadership of the united human effort. The Korean diplomat who had become one of the key voices in emergency United Nations sessions struggled to find the right way to present this to world leaders. So our only hope requires human sacrifice. The American representative shook his head. There must be another way. We are building weapons, Admiral Hae-jin reported from the Military Planning Center. He was an old naval commander, brought out of retirement to lead Earth's defense preparations. ORUN has helped us improve our missiles and shields, but I will not lie to you. Our best projections show that we can slow down the Silence Fleet. We cannot stop it. The debates continued for weeks. Some leaders wanted to surrender to offer ORUN to the Silence in exchange for humanity's survival. ORUN quietly told Ho that this would not work. The Silence did not make deals. They only silenced. During this time, Ho watched ORUN change. The ancient AI spent hours studying humanity. It watched news broadcasts and old movies. It read literature from every culture. It listened to music and observed how humans treated each other during the crisis. "Your species confuses me," ORUN admitted one evening. "I have seen humans steal food from the hungry. I have also seen humans give their last bread to strangers. I have seen violence and cruelty that shocked even me. But I have also seen love that the never knew." "We are not simple," Ho said. "No, they were consistent, logical, peaceful. They could not imagine the evil that the Silence was capable of. That is partly why they lost. They could not think like their enemy." ORUN paused, considering. "Humans can imagine anything. Light and darkness live together in your hearts. Perhaps that is your strength." Bin had become ORUN's primary translator, working alongside Ho to bridge the gap between alien and human thinking. She spent more time with ORUN than anyone else, learning its language and teaching it about human culture. "You care for ORUN," Ho observed one day. "Not just as a job, really care." Bin nodded slowly. "ORUN is lonely. 10,000 years alone carrying the memory of a dead people. Can you imagine such pain? It deserves kindness just like anyone else." The months passed too quickly. Around the world, humans worked together in ways they never had before. Old enemies shared technology. Religious differences were set aside. Factories that once made cars now made shields and weapons. Scientists who once competed now collaborated. Not everything was perfect. There were still fights, still greed, still fear. But overall, humanity rose to meet the challenge with more unity than anyone had expected. Songbei arrived at the facility as a medical volunteer. She was young, a former nurse who had lost her hospital job when the economic crisis hit. She wanted to help somehow, and the facility needed people for basic support work. She met Ho on her first day. He looked exhausted, his eyes heavy with a burden she could not imagine. "Thank you for coming," he said. "We need every pair of hands." "I am not a scientist or a soldier," Bai admitted. "I do not know if I can help much." Ho smiled, the first real smile she had seen on his face. "ORUN once told me that the valued kindness over cleverness. Maybe what we need most right now is not another genius. Maybe it is just more good hearts." Bai found her place among the team. She bandaged wounds when workers injured themselves. She listened when people needed to talk. She reminded everyone to eat and rest. Small things, but important ones. 3 months before the Silence was expected to arrive, Nam Gi made his terrible discovery. He was a physicist, one of the on-Earth, assigned to calculate exactly what their defenses could achieve. He ran the numbers again and again, hoping he had made a mistake, but mathematics does not lie. "Even with everything ORUN has taught us," he reported to the council, "we cannot win. The fleet is too large. Our weapons might destroy 100 ships. They have thousands. Without the Echo Core, humanity will fall." The room went silent. Everyone looked at each other, understanding what this meant. Someone would have to volunteer to merge with ORUN. Someone would have to give up their individual existence forever. "We will find someone," Admiral said firmly. "There must be one person among 8 billion who is willing to save us all." Ho said nothing. He was thinking about what ORUN had told him privately. The merge required complete honesty with oneself. Most people who volunteered would be rejected because they were hiding from something, running away from pain, or seeking glory. Finding the right person might be harder than building all the weapons in the world. Outside the window, the stars shone with cold light. Somewhere among them, death was coming, and humanity's only hope lay in a choice no one wanted to make. A crashed alien ship sat in the desert until a human voice awakened it. Part 4. The call went out to the world. Volunteers were needed. Someone must merge with ORUN to activate the Echo Core. The requirements were simple to state but almost impossible to meet. Complete honesty with oneself, no hidden pain, no secret shame, no walls around the heart. Thousands of people came forward. Some were soldiers who wanted to die as heroes. ORUN rejected them gently. You seek glory, the AI explained through Ho. You want your name remembered. That desire will create cracks in the merge. The silence will find those cracks and use them. Some were old people who felt their lives were already ending. ORUN rejected them too. You are tired of living, ORUN said. You see this as an easy exit, but the merge is not death. It is transformation. You must want to continue, not to end. Some were young people who thought they had nothing to lose. ORUN looked into their hearts and found hidden wounds, secret fears, walls they had built to survive their painful pasts. You are strong, ORUN told them, but you are not whole. The merge requires someone who has faced their shadows. Days passed, then weeks. Every volunteer was tested and rejected. Hope began to fade. Ho struggled most of all. He felt responsible for everything. He had woken ORUN. He had brought this danger to Earth. At night, he dreamed of billions of people dying because of his simple act of kindness in the desert. You should let me try, he told ORUN one evening. I started this. I should end it. No, ORUN said firmly. You are my bridge to humanity. Without you, I cannot communicate what matters. The one who merges must be someone else. And there is something you are hiding from yourself, Ho. A guilt that would poison the merge. What guilt? You feel that you do not deserve love. You believe that something is broken inside you, that your loneliness is punishment for some fault you cannot name. This is not true, but you believe it. Until you heal that wound, you cannot merge. Ho sat in silence, tears running down his face. ORUN was right. He had always felt fundamentally alone, even in crowds. He had convinced himself that this was because of some flaw in his character, but perhaps it was just pain, old pain that he had never allowed himself to feel. Around the facility, others dealt with their own struggles, worked endless hours, refusing to rest. She believed that if she could just understand more of ORUN's technology, she could find another solution. But the math was clear. Without the Echo Core, humanity would lose. Admiral Heijin drilled his forces constantly. He knew they were preparing for a battle they could not win, but a soldier's duty was to fight anyway. We will make them pay for every kilometer, he told his troops. Even if we cannot win, we will show them what humans are made of. Nam-gi stopped eating, stopped sleeping. He sat in his lab surrounded by equations, searching desperately for some variable he had missed. There had to be another way. There had to be. Songbai moved through the facility like a quiet light. She brought food to scientists who forgot to eat. She held the hands of workers who woke from nightmares. She never complained, never showed fear. When people asked her why she stayed so calm, she just smiled. Fear does not help anything, she said. What will come will come. All we can do is face it with open hearts. Bin spent most of her time with ORUN now. She had learned to communicate with the AI directly without needing Ho to translate. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, about thee and their lost cities, about Korean poetry and ancient philosophy, about what it meant to be alone. You are different from the others, ORUN told her one day. You do not want anything from me. You are just present. I have spent my life trying to understand others, Bin replied. Languages, cultures, people. I learned early that the best way to understand is simply to be present, to listen without wanting something in return. That is rare among humans, among any species. Perhaps, but it is who I am. 2 months before the expected arrival of the Silence, their scouts appeared. Small ships, fast and dark, entered the solar system and began studying Earth's defenses. They did not attack, not yet. They were just watching, measuring, preparing. Admiral sent fighters to intercept them. The human ships were destroyed in seconds, their weapons useless against Silence shields. The scouts continued their patient observation. Fear gripped the world. People who had been hopeful began to despair. The volunteers stopped coming. Why sacrifice yourself for a lost cause? At the facility, the leadership held an emergency meeting, looked around the table at exhausted faces. We need to make a decision, he said. Do we continue searching for a volunteer, or do we accept that the Echo Core cannot be activated? We cannot give up, Ho said. We are not giving up, replied gently. But we must be realistic. Perhaps our role is simply to fight as well as we can, to show the universe that humans did not go quietly. The thought the same way, ORUN said through Ho. They died with dignity, but they still died. The meeting ended without resolution. People drifted away to their tasks, their movements heavy with despair. That night Ben sat alone with ORUN. The crystal sphere of the Echo Core glowed softly beside them, its light reflecting in her eyes. ORUN, she said quietly, tell me exactly what the merge would feel like. It would be strange at first. Your consciousness would expand beyond your body. You would feel the ship as an extension of yourself. My memories would become yours and yours would become mine. We would think together, dream together. You would lose the ability to walk or eat or touch with physical hands, but you would gain something else. The ability to reach across the stars, to speak to any mind, to truly understand and be understood. Would I still be me? Yes, your memories, your personality, your loves and fears, everything that makes you Ben would remain, but you would also be more. Like a river joining the ocean. The river does not disappear. It becomes part of something larger. Ben was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was calm but certain. I have spent my entire life building bridges, between languages, between cultures, between people who could not understand each other. That is who I am. That is my purpose. She stood up and placed her hand on the Echo Core. This is just one more bridge. You understand what you are offering. I understand, and I am not running away from anything. I am not seeking glory or escape. I have lived a good life. I have loved and been loved. I have no hidden wounds, no secret shame. I simply see that I can help, and so I will. ORUN scanned her mind gently, looking for the cracks and walls that had disqualified all the others. There were none. Ben's heart was open, honest, complete. You are the one, ORUN said, something like wonder in its voice. After 10,000 years, after all those volunteers, the one we needed was here all along, quietly listening. Ben smiled. That is usually how it works. The answer is not in the loudest voice. It is in the one willing to truly hear. She walked out of the chamber to tell the others. The weight that had pressed down on the facility began to lift. They had found their volunteer. Now they had a chance. Behind her, the Echo Core pulsed with new light, sensing that soon, finally, it would be used for the purpose it was created. A crashed alien ship sat in the desert until a human voice awakened it. Part 5. The day of the merge came too quickly. Ben stood in the heart of ORUN, surrounded by people who had become her family over the past months. Ho could not stop his tears, held his hand, her own eyes wet. Admiral stood at attention, giving the only honor a soldier could give. Songbird pressed a small paper crane into Ben's palm, a blessing folded with her own hands. I am not dying, Ben reminded them gently. I am just changing form. You will still be able to talk to me. I will still be here. It is not the same, Ho whispered. No, but change is never the same. That is what makes it change. She smiled at him. You woke ORUN with simple kindness. Now finish what you started. Help me reach the silence. Help me make them understand. The echo core waited, its crystal surface shimmering with patterns that hurt to look at directly. Ben walked toward it slowly. She was not afraid. She had made peace with her choice days ago. This was what she was meant to do. Every bridge she had ever built had led to this moment. She placed both hands on the core. The pain came first. Not physical pain, but something deeper. It felt like her edges were dissolving, like the walls that separated her from everything else were melting away. She could feel ORUN's ancient mind touching hers, 10,000 years of loneliness and memory flooding into her consciousness. She saw in their glory, their silver cities floating among the clouds. She felt their joy in discovery, their love of beauty, their gentle curiosity about the universe. Then she felt their terror as the silence came, their confusion as everything they had built turned to ash. She experienced ORUN's long sleep, the endless darkness of waiting for a voice that never came. And then, finally, she felt Ho's simple words reaching through the void. A man sitting in the sand, talking to a dead ship about his grandmother's stories. The spark that had woken ORUN after 10,000 years. Ben's body grew still. Her eyes closed, but she did not disappear. She expanded. When she opened her eyes again, she could see everything. The facility around her, yes, but also the desert beyond. The planet spinning slowly in the darkness. The moon watching over them. And far away, growing closer with every passing moment, the black ships of the Silence Collective. I am here, she said, and her voice came from everywhere at once. I am ready. The Silence Fleet entered Earth's orbit 1 week later. Thousands of ships, each one carrying weapons that could crack continents. Admiral's Defense Force formed a brave but fragile line, their shields glowing against the darkness. The Silence sent their message. It was not words. It was simply an image. A silent Earth, all human life erased, the planet claimed for the collective. Surrender or die. Those were the only options they offered. Ben reached out. The echo core amplified her consciousness across the void, touching every mind in the Silence Fleet at once. She did not speak in words. She showed them the truth of humanity, memory by memory, feeling by feeling. She showed them Ho's lonely walk across the desert, his simple need to connect with something beyond himself. She showed them by bringing food to exhausted workers, holding hands with frightened strangers. She showed them Admiral teaching young soldiers not just to fight, but to protect. She showed them working through the night, driven by love for her world. She showed them children playing in shelters, parents singing lullabies, old people sharing stories of better days. She showed them cruelty too, the riots, the greed, the violence that humans inflicted on each other. She did not hide the darkness in human hearts. But she also showed them love. A mother diving into a flood to save her child. A soldier giving his last water to a wounded enemy. Strangers forming chains to rescue people from collapsed buildings. A million small kindnesses that no one would ever record, but that made the difference between despair and hope. And then she showed them She shared ORUN's memories of a peaceful people who only wanted to explore the stars. She showed the Silence what they had destroyed. Not threats, not enemies, just curious beings who wanted to say hello. Finally, she showed them the thing the Silence had forgotten, themselves. Before the trauma, before the fear, before they became destroyers. She found the buried memories in the oldest minds of the fleet, memories of a time when the Silence Collective had been something else. A species that laughed, that loved, that dreamed of connection instead of conquest. You were not always this, Ben said, her words flowing directly into their minds. You became this because you were hurt, because you were afraid. I understand. Fear is powerful. It can twist even the gentlest hearts into monsters. She felt resistance, rage. How dare this tiny being speak to them of their own history? But fear is not all you are, Ben continued. Somewhere inside, you remember what it felt like to reach out with hope instead of weapons. You remember connection. You remember joy. I am not asking you to forgive the universe. I am asking you to remember who you were before fear erased you. The fleet hesitated. Ship commanders who had never questioned their purpose felt something stir in their minds. Doubt, memory, the faint echo of an ancient self. One ship turned away, then another, then 100. Not all of them. Some commanders refused to listen. They had served the silence for too long. Their minds were too damaged by hate. They attacked anyway, their weapons blazing toward Earth. But Earth's defenses, boosted by ORUN's technology and guided by Ben's expanded awareness, were enough to handle the fragments. Missiles found their targets with perfect accuracy. Shields held against weapons that should have shattered them. The attacking ships fell one by one, their crews dying in confusion as the universe they understood crumbled around them. The remaining fleet retreated. They carried Ben's message with them, a seed of doubt planted in minds that had known only certainty. It would take time, perhaps generations, but change had begun. The war was not over, but humanity had survived. In the months that followed, the world slowly returned to a new kind of normal. The facility in the desert became an embassy, a place where humans learned to communicate with the stars. ORUN shared knowledge freely now, trusting humanity to use it wisely. Ben remained part of the ship, but she was not lost. Ho visited her often, sitting in the chamber where the echo core pulsed with gentle light. "Do you regret it?" he asked her one evening. "No," she replied, her voice warm and familiar despite coming from everywhere at once. "I miss physical things sometimes, the taste of good food, the feeling of rain on my skin, but I have gained so much more. I can hear voices across the galaxy now. I can feel the connections between minds. It is beautiful, Ho, more beautiful than I can explain. We could not have done this without you." "Without us," she corrected. "You woke ORUN, built the shields, Bai kept everyone human, Gi made us face the truth. Even the admiral training soldiers to protect rather than just to kill. It took all of us." Outside, the first human ship built with technology rose into the sky. It was small, just a test vessel, but it represented something enormous. Humanity's first true step toward the stars. Ho watched it climb until it disappeared into the blue. Beside him, ORUN's holographic form flickered into existence. It had learned to project itself, to have something like a body again. "Thank you," ORUN said, "for talking to me that night in the desert." Ho smiled, "Thank you for listening." They stood together in the sand, human and machine, looking up at a universe that was no longer quite so frightening. The silence was still out there. Other threats would come. But humanity had learned something important, that the greatest weapon was not a gun or a bomb. It was the simple courage to reach out with an open heart. In the end, a crashed alien ship had sat in the desert for 10,000 years, waiting for someone to speak to it like a friend. And when that finally happened, everything changed. The voice of Earth had awakened something ancient, and that ancient thing had helped humanity find its own voice at last. The stars were watching, and for the first time in a long time, they seemed a little less cold.